The first great literature that I ever read was Bill Waterson's Calvin and Hobbes. These cartoons were the reason I learned to read, my first introduction to philosophy, politics, art, and humor. Bill Waterson was born on July 5, 1958 in Washington, D.C. Waterson, who drew his first cartoon at age 8, spent much time in childhood alone, drawing cartoons and reading comics such as Walt Kelly's Pogo and Charles Schulz's Peanuts. These cartoons would later inspire his writing in Calvin and Hobbes. When he was a child, he knew that he either wanted to be an astronaut or a cartoonist, but quickly it became apparent that the former was not an option. He started drawing when he was little, and by the time he was a senior in high school, he had made some cartoons that got printed in his local newspaper. When he went to college, he gravitated towards political cartooning and was inspired by Jim Borgman, who had recently graduated from the college he was attending. He soon lost interest in political comics when he realized that he had severely inadequate drawing skills and that he didn't actually know that much about politics or history. After working for the Cincinnati Post and failing miserably, and then a 4-year stint living with his parents drawing ads by day and comics by night, a syndicate expressed some interest in the comics that he had been drawing. They asked him to make a comic about one of his secondary characters, a boy with an imaginary stuffed tiger. They eventually lost interest in the comic, but called him back a few months later and promised that if he could incorporate a character they had just obtained the rights to into his comic, they would sponsor his original idea. Waterson turned them down because he felt it wasn't right to make comics solely for the purpose of advertising. After this experience, Bill sent his idea out to the Universal Press Syndicate, who wanted to see more. He got the job, and his comic, which he named Calvin and Hobbes, soon became a big success. Waterson was put in an interesting position when his syndicate wanted to license the character and sell merchandise for it. Waterson fought his syndicate for over 3 years, the whole time fearing that legally Universal Press could take the strip away from him. In his 1990 commencement address, he explained his position on the fight. As my comic strip became popular, the pressure to capitalize on that popularity increased to the point where I was spending almost as much time screaming at executives as drawing. Cartoon merchandising is a $12 billion a year industry, and the syndicate understandably wanted a piece of that pie. But the more I thought about what they wanted to do with my creation, the more inconsistent it seemed with the reasons I draw cartoons. It would have meant my purpose in writing was to sell things, not say things. My pride in craft would be sacrificed to the efficiency of mass production and the work of assistants. Authorship would become committee decision. Creativity would become work for pay. Art would turn into commerce. In short, money was supposed to supply all the meaning I'd need. What the syndicate wanted to do, in other words, was turn my comic strip into everything calculated, empty, and robotic that I hated about my old job. They would turn my characters into television hucksters and t-shirt sloganeers and deprive me of characters that actually expressed my own thoughts. Eventually, Waterson won his battle. It came at high cost, but ensured that Bill's comics would remain art, an expression and commentary on the world around him. In 1995, at the height of the strip's popularity, Bill Waterson retired. He said that he'd said all he had to say and that he wanted to live a more balanced life with his family. Since that time, he has avoided publicity and lived a quiet life. Through the imagination and creativity of his strip, Bill Waterson provided a unique commentary on life, the universe, and everything. In an age where wealth, accumulation, and fame seem to be the highest values, Bill Waterson's choices form a contrast. He walked away from both wealth and fame for something different. In a speech given to graduates, he said, "Creating a life that reflects your values and satisfies your soul is a rare achievement. In a culture that relentlessly promotes avarice and excess as the good life, a person happy doing his own work is usually considered an eccentric, if not subversive, as if a job title and salary are the sole measure of human worth. To invent your own life's meaning is not easy, but it's still allowed, and I think you'll be happier for the trouble."